Hi class, this is my second video on the novel feed, taking us right up through the end of it. So spoiler alert, shut this video off if you don't want to know what happens at the end and you haven't finished reading the novel yet. That quiz is due tomorrow. It says today on the syllabus, but it's open until at least Wednesday, so you can turn it in during these next couple of days. Um, I wanted to talk about our probably shared, I don't know, disappointment with the end of the novel. I've asked you for your next discussion post just to write about your emotional response when you close the last page of that book. What did you feel? Um, and it's clearly apocalyptic, Nero with his violin while Rome is burning kind of stuff. And yet Titus does go to see kind of the living ghost of Violet to tell her that he understands what is happening in the world and that the world is ending. People's skin is falling off their faces. I mean, there is no fixing it. It's a truly apocalyptic novel, um, and I think it really does speak to the moment in which it was written. He kind of hyper emphasized the apocalyptic overtones at the end of the novel post 9/11. So we all want Violet to lead the revolution, right? To be, what's her name from the Hunger Games? Katniss Everdeen, right? The main character in Divergent. They break out of their categories. They you know beat the system. They beat the oppressive totalitarian state that's taken over. And instead, that totalitarian consumer corporate political and cultural kind of machinery overwhelms human life. Um, and so, one of the elements I wanted to talk about, and it's something you can certainly write about for your final paper, I've made the topics kind of broad, very, very open, is the way that the real world, what's happening outside of what the feed is telling the characters is happening, um, that real world almost ceases to exist once it's force fed through the feed. For example, all the characters have lesions. I think of lesion and I think pain and cancer and suffering. Um, and yet, none of the characters ever expresses the physical discomfort of pain. And why is that? The novel isn't clear on that because Titus wouldn't know it, right? He's our narrator, so we only know what Titus knows. He doesn't know physical pain. And I would imagine that is part of the machinery of the feed, is to suppress the actual personal human suffering that would go with being on an earth where, the oceans are all dead, the air is so polluted that you know and so toxic. The world is so toxic that it would cause human actual bodily suffering. I would also say that's why the characters can't identify with the real suffering that's happening in the real world. We have that scene in Nudging where the Coalition of Pity, hacks in and shows people this is what's actually happening in the world, and they turn it into a fashion statement. No big deal. Um, so that's one of the sort of the feed as this filter to human feeling is a really powerful, I think, theme in the novel in a number of different ways. I also wanted to think about the technobiology of the feed. That would be another kind of thing you could write about, the sort of interface between human being and technology, machinery, um, and a number of what I'm going to call cultural artifacts are sort of being predicted by feed. If you want to look up Neuralink, which Elon Musk, the inventor of Tesla, has a company that is working on a kind of synthesis between human being and artificial intelligence. Imagine, getting chips implanted into you, which people are voluntarily doing. Some corporations are even making that a possibility. Instead of having to swipe your card and put all your stuff through a machine, you can simply have a chip implanted. A Dutch company is working on that. So that's something else I think is really interesting. And you know, the the fusion of human body and technology, and then the actual natural world, which is dying. I mean, even the clouds. Um, and the cloud didn't exist as a corporate entity when the novel was written. But even the clouds are trademarked. They're owned. They're an advertising platform. And finally, I want us to think about the inability in the characters ultimately to resist, to hope for a different world. Um, Violet's father is the great exception, and her mother, who's moved to South America and is joining some kind of resistance, which is sort of like that old resistance is futile kind of um, theme that goes on in the novel. And Violet tries to resist, and yet she's desperate to feel what normal life is. But normal life in this novel is to become like Titus and his friends, who are practically inhuman in the way that they interrelate with each other, with the natural world, with themselves. Um, and so, you know, Violet's end is predicted at the beginning. She goes to the moon because she wants to see what normal life is all about. And you can almost look at the whole plot structure of the novel. It begins with Violet landing on the moon, and it ends with her dying in a coma, essentially. So she is the plot structure in a way, and that malfunctioning feat of hers is essential to that. So those are some of the big themes to kind of think about, keep in mind as you're trying to come up with your paper topic. Those are posted now. I will be posting another video tomorrow about cultural artifacts, and I'll also be sending you an assignment on those as well, which I think will be really fun. They'll help you open up your paper with something that's totally cool, unique, amazing, and only you would have been writing about it. So I'll model some of those for you as well. All right, 2 weeks to go. Your papers are due in less than 2 weeks. So now that you're done with the reading, you got the critical reading to go, and then everything else is just working on your final paper. All right, take care.